My name's Andrew Tuddenham. I'm the farming advisor for the National Trust in Wales. We're going to use this 30-minute slot to provide a bit of a presentation on the Payment for Outcomes project that the Trust is delivering on Llŷn, and then open up to questions. So we'll just do a half and half, 15 minutes of talking with a few slides, and then open up for questions. So if I share my screen, I'm going to just put a... So we're going to talk about the Payment for Outcomes project, and really just to establish where this came from. The trial has been running for a few years on Llŷn. It's now into its second proper year, and it's part of a wider project, the Tirwedd Llŷn Sustainable Management Scheme project, which the Llŷn Landscape Partnership is delivering, led by Gwynedd Council. I'm going to introduce to everyone Andy Godber, who's our countryside manager on Llŷn, and also Carwyn Roberts, who's the tenant farmer of Court Farm, which is just overlooking Aberdaron on the very tip of the Llŷn. So he's one of the National Trust tenants involved in the trial. And really what the scheme has been investigating is just a new model for incentivising and supporting farmers to deliver more for nature. It's looking to increase habitat connectivity and establish nature-friendly farming within those farm systems, and provide something of a demonstration to possible post-CAP schemes, really looking at how to use a payment by results or payment by outcomes approach, rather than using a set prescriptive approach. Andy will be able to explain a lot more about this. And I'm conscious that there are other people who could be talking here, because this has been developed as a partnership, and in particular we've had really good support from Gwynedd Council, Arwyl Jones, and also we've been designing the trial with a lot of input from Pont, in particular Jan Sherry, so just acknowledgement to those individuals as well. I think that also illustrates how the scheme has been built on some really solid partnership working. It's a project which comes after a long series of partnership projects, each focusing on initially habitats around the Llŷn, and ultimately now what we're looking at is how to get that habitat delivery embedded within farm business models. So I don't want to steal Andy's thunder, but over to you, Andy. If you just say next slide, please, I'll move them on. If you can unmute yourself as well.
Yeah, it would be useful if I was unmuted. Okay. Right then, so hello, Bob. Pnawn da. It's nice to be able to talk to you, even if it is virtually, about our project. Essentially, we have got a free farm trial focused in on our, well, free farms, which are Gwers, Mae'r and Mae'r, which all formed part of an area that we were focusing in on as part of the sustainable management scheme, to look at habitat connectivity, improving the buffer zones in and around our priority habitats, and the opportunity to create a, well, develop a scheme looking at how we could look at a whole farm approach on 3 of our tenanted farms was a fantastic opportunity, which, as Andrew said, is partly funded through the Sustainable Management Scheme, but also through the payments made directly from the National Trust. So, cut a long story short, we've got 3 farms, varying size. Court is the biggest, which is 90 hectares, Mae'r about 52, and Mae'r, a very small unit of 20 hectares. Mixed farms, primarily sheep and dairy, sheep and beef, but with some arable as well. and probably a mix. I think it's safe to say a mixture of conservation land and the more fertile, more intensive agricultural fields as well. That's important because as a whole farm trial, what we were always looked at doing is looking at the entirety of the unit to try and make it more sustainable. I think in years gone by, we focused overly on just the habitat land, just those areas of real key habitat importance, whereas actually looking at the whole makes those areas more an integral part of the farm and delivers far more sustainability as the farm unit. Anyway, cut a long story short, the trial is focusing in on 7 key habitats, which are assessed each year based around their importance, but also what they're delivering from a habitat health perspective. So we've got 7 key habitats, those being coastal and species-rich grassland, heathland, coastal habitat mosaic, which I'll mention a little bit more about in a minute, wetlands, semi-improved grassland, improved grassland and arable. Those are the primary habitats which we see on our units in Llŷn. Obviously, you know, in other areas it would be significantly different. So, but this is bespoke really for the habitat types that we see on Llŷn. Coastal mosaics was an interesting one. That was really made up, I suppose, for those people who mainly deal in the uplands. It's similar to a FFERMIO habitat, where you've got a mix and match, grassland, heath, gorse, scrub. Next slide. Really, the way the system works is that each habitat is assessed each year and it's given a point, a score, really, which then that score then represents the payment. I'll come on to that in a minute, but basically each habitat has its positives and its negatives. In terms of coastal grassland, for example, where the species diversity is high, where it's got a lot of key indicator species are showing, that will give you a high score. But that is dependent on them being able to flower. So it's really based on whether the grazing is correct. Undergrazing, overgrazing will impact on your score. For example, the areas, coastal grassland, where it might have the species, but they are under a large area of feggy grass, your score will go down because the key species are being swamped by grasses, undergrazed. Flip side of that, overgrazing on those coastal slopes may mean that the species are there, but they're unable to flower. So one of the challenges we've got is that some of our is to get that grazing, the numbers right, and at the right time. It's the usual challenge. On some of our sites, it's actually been really useful that our tenants have been able to reintroduce cattle to some of these sites. That's worked well because the timing of grazing has worked with by getting grazing from cattle at late winter, early spring. We've been able to take that mass of the old dead grasses off, allow flowering, and then you're able to take the cattle off during flowering, which also works well at the time when there's more people around. So avoiding those conflicts which may happen with regards to people and cattle, especially on the coastal path. So moving on very quickly, the scoring rates. As I said, you have those things which are positive, i.e. the species which are abundant within the sward, that will give you a higher score, offset by the negatives, which may be invasive agricultural grasses and the like, will balance your score. The more positives you've got, you'll get a higher score. More negatives, the lower the score will be. And the system works on a points system, which then gives you a final overall score for that field, which is on a basis of a score of 1 to 10. As you can see there, it's not a straight line. The scores incentivize progress. So the more the farmer is willing to do, the more actions that he puts in place on those individual fields, the score will increase. And you'll see there, the curve really ramps up in and around the area of 0.7 on the scoring, on the 1 to 10 scoring system. 7 is the point which we consider for that habitat, that field is in favourable condition. So it's reaching high nature value. So those score, the payment rates ramp up with those, and the payment rates are based around Glastir equivalent score points, but also taking into consideration an assessment which the National Trust did on the cost of good management, with an incentivisation as well for uptake in the trial. So it could be considered reasonably lucrative at the moment, but it is, it's, as you say, it's a trial. So that's really the basic, very briefly, the basis of this, how the system works. As we know, it's payments for outcome trials are based around the farmer making those decisions. So it's very much a trial of passing the management very much back to the farmer to make those decisions. In terms of other things that we're delivering, farm business appraisals are very key to it, giving better understanding of how the farm's finances work, so there is more of an understanding of moving towards a more sustainable system. Also giving the farmers the knowledge of how to make the decisions. So soil testing, soil training, meds training, habitats and species training, so they understand their habitats and can make really, really sound decisions as to the future. In terms of an example, here's Cwrt in front of you. You can see how the farm on the left, that's before the trial, very focused around improved grassland with a very small buffer of habitat land around the periphery along the coast. You'll see on the right significant changes there, where new hay meadows are being created, buffering the coastal slopes, trials with herbal lays and what have you, which I don't want to steal Carwyn's thunder on. So really just making a much more varied farm holding with much more space for nature, but very much focused on making the farm more sustainable and working within its capacity rather than pushing it too much. That's enough for me. I'll move on. I'll let Carwyn, if Carwyn's there, we can come on to questions later. That was very quick snapshot of it. I don't think I've condensed this project into 5-10 minutes before.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Okay, so introducing Carwyn.
Hi, yeah, sorry if I'm babbling a bit, I'm a bit nervous, but there we go. Yeah, we started with the payment for outcomes. Well, you can see through the two maps we just had on the last slide, we've put a coastal buffer in. We've reseeded 2 fields, two with hay meadow mix, and with the existing hay meadow, we took in some green hay, and to better the sward. I'm not sure if it's the right word, but better it. And by bettering it, as you saw on Andy's slides, by bettering the sward, hopefully we'll better our score, and we'll get paid better for what we've done. So it's one thing we've done to start with, and then we've gone down the route of putting herbalising, which I had read a bit about it, but done nothing with them before. I'm not sure what it was, a wary word, or not sure how it was going to go, but we put them in. More than very pleased. Lucky for them this year. First summer this year with them, and the dry spring we had. They were the only 2 fields that thrived with us. Just because of the deeper rooting, more drought-resistant species in the sward, and so by doing that, it kept us going. To be honest, we were very lucky for the sward through the summer, and well, through this payment for outcomes, we've also we were, to be honest, busy fools, but by introducing the payment for outcomes, when we were first offered it, we were thought we'd better be at the forefront of something new than just following people. So we went into it. We had somebody from the outside to come in, business plan. We looked at what we were doing. We looked at what we should be doing, and we've changed quite a bit of what we are doing now. We're still in the very start of it. We're in the start of the process. Just by cutting stock, our stock has been cut to half, really. Just by doing that, everything's doing better, and also by doing that, cutting stock, reevaluating the breeds of what we've got. We've changed. We did have the same cattle before, but we were crossing them a bit, and we've gone down the route of keeping them pure. We AI them all. We look at what we pick. We put more feed efficient pull on the cows, so we can. Our plan is to hopefully by next year we'll be more into strip grazing or techno grazing, whatever it's the proper word is. The herbalism, we'll have this year's calves. They'll be out there all next summer, the male calves, and we'll be weighing them, and we'll hopefully have selling them like they'll be fat. They'll go off grass. Hopefully, they might be lighter, but the cost of producing the extra meat, the extra weight of kilos, isn't worth it. So that's one way of another way we've gone down to what we're doing.
Gawain, thank you very much. I think with 10 minutes to spare, we may need to just move to questions, but so there will be opportunity to talk. But Diolch, I think we're absolutely thrilled with the direction that Kurt is taking. It's really embracing the whole nature-friendly farming ethos and becoming much more sustainable as a result. So just really to conclude, we are starting to see some early results, some movement in the scores, but as it's only been a few years, and one of those was a big drought year, there has been a bit of variation there. But this is the purpose of the trial, to understand exactly how those scores change and really how the farmers respond and share a vision that we're working on together and deliver it for themselves. So I think I'd better stop. thank our speakers, but now move into the last bit of the session and open for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can look at anything that might have come in. Have there been questions, Stephen?
Yes, we've got one from Helen. Was woodland deliberately excluded, or is it just that these farms happen to not have woodland?
They're all quite coastal, so there's not a lot of trees growing.
Do you want me to come in there?
But yes, Andy, please.
Yeah, it's primarily down to the fact that Llŷn is a little bit devoid of woodland. Where there are opportunities to create new woodland, we will look at those. But really, from an existing habitat perspective, not really relevant on these free farms. That's the only reason.
Fair enough. Helen has another question. Cattle weights were mentioned. Is productivity being measured alongside habitat measures?
Carwyn, were you unmuting?
Yeah, this year was the first year we were great. First summer we had on them. We didn't have the correct cattle with this COVID. I'd like somebody to come and teach me how and help me how to measure the grass better. So next year's plan is, yes, I will be weighing, measuring the grass growth and weighing. But this year, just things got a bit out of control. Yeah, just personal control. We'll get on it better next year.
Okay, thank you. I put a question in about the timeline, Andrew. What sort of, you were saying that the results have started to come in, but it's early days. So what time period do you expect to start seeing results? How long will the trial continue? And a supplementary question is, are the farmers happy, Andy and Carwyn? And would you like to continue, or do you want to see something change?
Well, I can answer the first bit, Stephen. I suppose the results are multiple. It's not just the habitat response, which is what the graphs were starting to show, but really the results that we want to see are exactly what Carwyn is showing, which is that there's a clear understanding of what the more sustainable future for the farm is, both in terms of land use and in terms of farm business. Some of that is going to be captured in a kind of non-statistical way, in that we've only got 3 farms, so it's more about their case studies, their stories. Otherwise, going back to the habitat data, 2018 was sort of the baseline year, where we were just calibrating the scoring system. 2019, last year, was the first proper year with work underway. 2020, we've got another full year ahead of us in 21, and then the project's due to finish in 2022, but we would like to see a way of continuing that. And really our next development might be towards helping our farmers get involved more in the monitoring of the outcomes, so that they're the ones who are really driving it then. That's the ultimate aim, is to get the farmers to be totally in control, knowing where it needs to go, and they can find the practical ways to achieve it.
Great stuff. So then, Andy and Carwyn, I take it you're in for the long haul.
I'll go first, Andy. Like Andrew just said, we've done all the hard work. It's done now. It's just bettering yourself now. The bottom line is, the better our score is, more we get paid. The happier we are. So I'm very keen to carry on. And also, I'd like to just to say that as the things are going, the trust are very approachable. They make our life much easier. They're very approachable people, and they're very helpful as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing I could add, thank you, Carwyn. I think the only thing I would add really there is, in terms of the future, I think it's proved to us that the even over 2 years, I think the fact that we're on a day-to-day basis speaking to our tenants, discussing things like farm sustainability, discussing habitat change, discussing how to make the farm holding more robust, more resilient, especially with the advent of climate change. I think it's proving it's a change in approach. It's putting the farmers very much in control, and I think they are happy as a consequence. They're also happy that they're understanding the land, the habitat management, the sustainability, the actual bottom line of the farm substantially more. So it's the package of things together which I think is proving the merit of the project, and hopefully it can continue beyond the initial timescales.
Great stuff. Thank you. There are more.
Yeah, so this is a trial, and it's really being used to illustrate how an agri-environment scheme could be delivered rather than through the sort of prescriptive approach that Gladsteer takes, where you have to achieve the standard or you don't get the money. This is a sliding scale of payments, and I think that this is starting to address one of the questions that I spotted came in from Julia about farmers receiving a reward for maintenance. Well, yes, of course, that would be there in this model if they were just achieving the same quality of habitats year in, year out. The payments would go up if they could increase the, say, species richness or flowering abilities. So yeah, that's all in scope.
Yeah. The beauty of it is that sliding scale, the more that you get incentivized not to just be happy with your lot, I think is the beauty of it, really. But there's always that quest to push up, and where this sliding scale's been utilised in other parts of Europe, in Ireland and what have you, that's really worked. That having that quest to go that little bit more has always been a little bit more as worked a treat, really.
Well, and I suppose to some extent, then it's the National Trust being able to resource the guidance and the close working that people like Carwyn are responding positively to. Yeah,
it is. And likewise, there's a question there about capital works, and some of that has been funded through the SMS scheme as well. So this trial isn't really trying to understand how much money does it take to achieve some sort of system change. It's trying to understand, how do we share a vision, how do we describe what good looks like on a habitat, and how to provide that sort of advice which is not leading, but it's not prescriptive, but is going to ensure that our farmers understand how they could achieve better quality habitats and higher payments. So, how much farmers get paid or how they get paid in an agri-environment scheme is really down to Welsh Government to work out.
Sure. There's a nitty-gritty question from Jane Ricketts-Hine. Is there a trade-off between supporting different habitats, different types of the same habitat, for example, some species like shortgrass over tufty? So is that, I mean, it's probably site-specific.
Okay. Well, I can answer that one. Chuff was a question which we were always kind of like on Llŷn. It's our one of our key species. But working as a partnership over the years, we've gone away from RSPB thinking that short grass is absolutely fundamental. That would have the knock-on impact of probably no flowering, so a reduction in that habitat's quality. So by working together, we've actually found a bit of a trade-off, that we're actually looking at having a rotational grazing schemes in some of these key areas, where certain areas are grazed harder than others over years. So areas are given over for flowering, and then other areas are given over for maybe more of a land akin to chuff feeding. So it's that finding that balance, I suppose, and working with the farmer to actually kind of do some rotational grazing, let an area rest, because you know full well that the area next door is suitable as well, which is where I suppose that broadening out the areas of real key nature conservation value into those buffer areas is pretty key going forward, and is part and parcel of what we're trying to deliver.
That's excellent, thank you. And somebody's asked, will there be a report? Andrew, could you put a link in perhaps to where people can see, I mean, even the outline description of the project?
Yeah, currently there's a National Trust web page as part of the National Trust site, so I'll put the link in for that. Yeah, we'd love to do a proper lessons learned report, ideally pulled together with an external consultant. So that's one thing we've got in sight, but we're sort of halfway through the trial at the moment.
So some ground still to cover.
Yeah.
Waiting. And what a time to be doing it.
This is the time to be doing it. This is the time when the sustainable farming scheme is being designed at the moment. So yes, this is the time to try and influence something, because we all know how inflexible and unpopular a prescriptive rules-based scheme is. Now is the time to demonstrate something which really allows farmers to take control.
Yeah, very exciting. Any last words from any of you, just while we wait for the next panel to assemble themselves? And from the audience, any other questions or comments?
Everyone's eating lunch.
Everybody's eating lunch. Well, and quite rightly.
Yeah.
It'll be a good Welsh lunch, I'm sure. My bread was, the flour was milled in Wales, that much I can say.
Very good.
So we'll make sure that there's a link in the chat to the National Trust webpage on this project. And if anybody wants to follow up further, the conference is very happy to help facilitate more cross-communication. There's a point there from Angie. Any interest in trialling holistic planned grazing as part of this work?
Yes, I think that's where Carwyn is sort of heading with your herbal lays, a long recovery rotation, and we've also have another farm which is a sort of satellite to the project, but it's another National Trust farm that was relet recently, where we'd established a lot of herbal lays with a planned rotation in mind. So the tenants are looking at that.
Great, because that also answers Martin's question, will the project be repeated elsewhere?
Yeah, and that's an example where we're hoping that where tenants can collaboratively work. You know, Carwyn can learn off the other satellite farm at Port Gwylan, where our new tenant there is in starting off a precision grazing technique on some of the herbal lays there. So you know, there's a lot of opportunity for cross-fertilization of ideas, really, between the farming community.
And really the ingredients would be, you know, a group of farmers and some money. We've established the scoring system, and this isn't necessarily new work. There are payment by results or payment by outcomes trials all over the place, particularly in Ireland. They're really grasping this. So yeah, it's just those magic ingredients of getting some farmers who want to work together and the funding to deliver it. So this could be applied, this model could be applied elsewhere.
Brilliant. Angie wants you to apply the model elsewhere.
Yeah.
And combat the view that it won't work in Wales. Yeah, I think there's scope to do that with those, with that money, magic money bit. Yes, yes. Great stuff. Well, thank you very much. I think we'll get ready for the next session. We'll make sure that links are available, and as I say, if people want to cross contact, we're happy to help facilitate that. So thank you all very much.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Diolch.
Well,